Federal treasurers have hailed Australia's long run of economic growth as a standout compared to the rest of the world. So, if times are so good, how come most of us are feeling worse off? Perhaps it's because we're looking at the wrong measure of economic well-being. That's the finding of a new report from the Commonwealth Bank, arguing that high population growth is masking economic weakness. The Commonwealth Bank senior economist Gareth Aird says Australian households are paying a heavy price, and he explained his theory to business reporter Michael Yander.
The Australian economy can grow at a much stronger rate than most other economies who are part of the OECD because we have very strong population growth here, and if you've got more people, you've got more spending. But what really matters for households is not the overall growth rate of the economy, but how their incomes are going. And on that score, things look pretty ordinary in Australia. Income growth has been incredibly weak now at the household level for about 5 years.
Just how weak is that growth?
Well, it's actually been falling in real terms, which is adjusting for the impact of inflation. And if you couple that with some other measures that relate to living standards like traffic congestion, which has been going up in the major cities, less affordable housing, falling public investment per head. If you put all of those things together, despite the fact that the economy is growing at what looks like a healthy clip on the surface, the way that that transfers to how households feel at the moment suggests that things aren't too crash.
So if you're someone out there who feels worse off than they did 4 or 5 years ago, there's actually some strong economic evidence that explains why that's the case.
That's absolutely correct. And that's why I think that when policymakers focus on aggregate growth rates, people at the household level can't relate to that. It doesn't mean a lot saying to somebody that the economy is growing at 3% when a lot of that growth is just coming from population growth and selling more commodities offshore. When you drill it back down to the household level, it's been a pretty tough 5 years for most households.
Is that an argument for curtailing the population growth, which we are already seeing easing off a little bit?
Yeah, look, the growth rate has come down a bit, but in terms of numbers, the numbers of migrants that come in here each year is quite high. And when you look at our population growth rate relative to other OECD countries, it is quite high. I think that at the moment, given what's happened at the household level, it warrants a broader policy discussion around the direction that Australia is taking with regards to immigration policy when you look at then how that impacts on the living standards, if you like, of the existing population. And I think things like traffic congestion, household affordability, the unemployment rate, household income, they all need to be looked at in the context of immigration policy and population growth.
It is one of the rare areas of bipartisan politics between the two major parties at the moment, though, quite a strong level of population growth. Who does it benefit?
Oh, well, look, it benefits businesses, I guess, that can take advantage of an ever-growing population or customer base, if you like. So ultimately, businesses that have market power and can operate at scalability do benefit from population growth. And I think, if you look at the historical experience of Australia, there has absolutely been benefits to having pretty strong population growth. But I think more recently, we've seen some of the indicators suggest that those benefits are probably starting to wane. And unless there's a commensurate lift in public investment, a look at housing affordability more broadly and what the kind of future is in terms of the rate at which the population growth of Australia's biggest cities are expanding, then I think the benefits to running a strong immigration program are questionable in relation to what it's doing at the household level.
Now, is there any way that governments can change their policies to make a high rate of population growth such as we have at the moment work?
Absolutely, and that's the challenge for them. And at the moment, you would say that looking at the evidence around, for example, traffic congestion or housing affordability, that not enough emphasis is being placed on that. So if both sides of government still want to run with the current policy around immigration growth, then they must be looking at what it's doing to housing affordability, traffic, other issues relating to public investment. Otherwise, you simply dilute the quality of the public infrastructure that you already have here, and you place further upward pressure on house prices and traffic congestion.
And just finally, when people are coming to look at economic growth figures that come out every quarter, what do you think are the measures that people should really be focusing on?
Oh, look, that's a great question. Headline economic growth figures always matter. But I think that it's a bit of a mouthful to say, but it's a measure called real net national disposable income per capita. It's a long one, but that is basically the best measure that we have that looks at living standards at the household level. And I think a greater emphasis on that is worthwhile from policymakers, because that is ultimately measuring the change in living standards at the household level.
And that's affected by things like how much money we're getting for, say, our commodity exports versus how much we're paying for, say, our electronics imports.
Yep, it is absolutely impacted by that. It's also impacted by productivity growth in the economy, by the proportion of people who are working here in Australia, and also net foreign income. It is, I think, the best measure that we have in terms of looking at income at the household level and changes in living standards at the household level.
That's Gareth Aird, Senior Economist with the Commonwealth Bank, speaking with business reporter Michael Yander.